Hey you guys, welcome back to Rocket City Yardstead. So today we are going to do some more canning. I have been under the weather, you guys know, and I have really been loving having soups on my pantry shelves. So we are going to make some more soup. Today we're going to make a ham and bean soup, and it will have onions, carrots, chicken broth, the ham. I'm using Great Northern beans, and we'll add some seasonings to it as well. But yesterday I canned up a bunch of chicken broth. I got 7 quarts, and then I have almost 2 gallons of chicken broth here that I put in the fridge overnight so that we could use it in the soup today. So I need to get going on peeling and chopping up my veggies. And while I do that, I am gonna take you guys back to last night and show you what the beans looked like. It is the night before we're gonna can up our soup. And I've got my beans in a pot. They've been washed, they've been sorted. They have a couple of inches of water over them. And I wanted you to see what they look like now so you can tell the difference in the morning. They're gonna swell significantly overnight. So let's take a peek. You can see that water line. There's a good 2 inches of water over these beans right now. So I'll see you in the morning. Here you can see the difference between the top of the water and the beans is a much smaller gap today. These beans have swollen quite a bit. They're going to be fantastic in our soup. So now that the beans have soaked overnight, we're going to drain them, rinse them off, put new water on them, and simmer them for half an hour while I am chopping up all of the veggies. All right, y'all, our carrots are chopped, our onions are chopped. I still need to chop the ham. Beans are simmering on the stove, and I am going to get the broth simmering as well. Here we go. So now I need to chop up 2 cups of ham. I figured maybe we would have a little chat about the ham in the soup while I am doing this. Because if you are familiar with canning, you know that they tell you not to use ham in soup. And I have been doing quite a bit of research on this because there are only a couple of recipes where ham has been tested. And so they tell you if it's not a tested recipe, don't use ham in it. However, maybe I'm a little bit of a rebel canner when it comes to this, because here are my thoughts, and you will just have to make your own choices here. But ham and bean soup is not really that different from split pea soup, which is one of the approved recipes where they have tested ham in the soup. Beans and peas and meat, they all can for the same amount of time. And this soup is actually going to be thinner than what a split pea soup is. So the heat penetration should not be a problem. And so my thought process here is this is not approved because they just haven't tested it. But using logic, I feel like it's safe to do. And I am going to make that choice for myself. You would have to make your own choice. But here we go. We have 2 cups of ham chopped up. I have 3 cups of carrots and 2 cups of onion. This is going to be divided between 6 quart jars, and then the beans will also be divided. So there we go. We're just waiting on our beans to finish simmering, and then we can start loading our jars. All of the components for our soup are ready to go into our jars. So we are going to start with our beans. You can mix all of these together if you want. I am choosing to layer stuff into the jars and make sure I get equal amounts in each jar. But either way is fine. So I need my canning funnel. Helpful. So we're putting just shy of a cup of beans into each of these jars. I started with 2 cups of dry beans, and that ended up with exactly 5 cups of beans. I have 6 jars here, so it comes out to something like 0.833 cups per jar when I did the math. So I'm kind of eyeballing this. We'll just do our best here and get them nice and divided evenly. If I have a few extra beans, we'll distribute them between my earlier jars because I went a little bit lighter on the first couple jars to make sure I had enough for the later ones. Got our beans. I think the next thing I want to do is our ham. And we should have about 1/3 of a cup of ham per jar. And again, if I end up with a little bit extra left over because I was being cautious, we'll just divvy it evenly. Now I think I want to do carrots. Carrots is about 1/2 cup per jar. I have a 1/4 cup measure here. I couldn't find a 1/2 cup, so 2 of those. I think this is going to be really pretty in the jars. If you don't know, there are rules from the USDA about making your own jarred soups and using your own recipes. And those directions very clearly state that you need to use ingredients that are approved for canning, which is why the ham is a little bit questionable, and that you can to the longest time called for one of your ingredients. So like in this soup, meat and beans both can for 90 minutes for quart jars. And so that is how long these will can for. And then the other rule is that you do not want to fill your jars completely full. It says fill them about half full. They should be half solids and half liquids. So now for our onions. This is about 1/3 of a cup per jar as well as the ham was. So I was a smidge shy chopping up my onions for 2 cups of onion for this. And I just wasn't going to chop into another onion for just maybe a tablespoon or 2 more. So the next thing I'm going to do here is add some seasonings. Seasonings are one of those things that you have, like spices, dried spices, and herbs. You have some freedom there when you're canning. So I am going to add a teaspoon of garlic powder to each of these. I'm going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. This pepper that I have is pretty strong, and so I don't want to overdo it. We can always season it a little bit more when we open a jar and heat it up if we'd like more pepper, but You don't want to overdo it because you can always add more, but you can't take it away. And then the last thing I am going to add as far as spices goes is about half a teaspoon of dry thyme. All right, so now we just need to swab out this pot for the pot of boiling broth over there and top our jars off with broth. You guys, I almost forgot salt. We definitely want some salt in these jars. So I'm gonna go, my broth is salted. And so I'm gonna go light on the salt and do about half a teaspoon per jar. Because I didn't salt my broth super heavy, but it does have some in there. And the ham has a little bit, and so there we go, salt. Let's move this broth over here and top these jars off. So I will tell you, I'm not 100% sure that I have enough broth to do all 6 of these jars. So I'm actually going to partially fill them and do all of them together instead of filling them completely, because my broth is pretty rich, and so I don't mind topping this with hot water if I don't have quite enough broth. I still have to debubble my jars, but I wanted to show you guys because I kind of can't believe this. They're all full with broth. That's how much broth I have left. So just the perfect amount. So we'll debubble and see if they need anything else. I think they're probably fine, but if they need a little extra liquid after the debubbling, we have that couple tablespoons of broth left, and we can always add some water. But they look like they're staying right at the right depth. There we go. All of our jars are debubbled. Going to wipe our rims of our jar with some vinegar. Make sure there's no fat on there that will hinder the seal of our lids. Then we'll get our lids on and get these into the canner. Right? It smells so good. That hot broth hit all of those herbs, and it just smelled fantastic. Pop all these jars into our water bath canner. I have a Presto canner. This one calls for 3 quarts of water in the bottom. And I've had it on a low temperature just so the water's nice and hot, but not boiling, so that it'll match the temperature of our jars. Ooh. It is a cold day here. And I think that's why my jars are all popping, because that hot soup compared to the ambient temperature of my house. So just like normal, we're going to wait for this to pop up. This is going to steam, a steady stream of steam for 10 minutes. and then we can put our weight on. Our canner has been venting for 10 minutes, and so now we're going to put our weight on, and now we just wait for it to start hula-ing and rocking there, and then we can set our timer. Our soup has finished pressure canning and the lock has dropped. So now we can take our weight off, take our lid off, and let this sit for another 10 minutes. Our soup's ready to come out of the pot, guys. So you can see here, it's nice and brothy. It smells fantastic. If you've never canned before, I tend to find that when you open the pressure canner, you can smell whatever you're canning because those scents come out until the jar seal. So some of my jars are already sealed, but I've got a few that haven't sealed yet. I'm gonna be really happy to have this soup on our pantry shelves. Here you have it, guys, our 6 quarts of ham and bean soup. I'm very excited to have these on the pantry shelves. We will definitely be cracking into them with some of this cold weather we've got ahead. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.